Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about why you should quit your job to be a photographer, but not yet. Right? So I'm Daniel Norton, if you guys don't know. If you're new to the channel, I'm a photographer in New York. I do these kind of videos on business, on technique, stuff like that. So go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in, photography. Specifically in this video, I want to talk about the idea of making that step into a professional, but also doing it in a way that eliminate what you were doing before. And the reason why I'm kind of taking this direction, I think it's kind of interesting, is I just watched a video maybe a few weeks ago, actually, when I wrote down a note to do this. I'll see if I can find it again in my history. And it was basically called something like Quit Your Job Now. And it was a guy, a relatively young guy, and he had this chart on the wall. And he was like, you only live whatever 80 years, and this much of your life you're doing this, and then this much of your life doing this, and then all this stuff here is work. And with all the kind of scary, like, oh my God, you're going to die before you do what you really want to do, stuff that was mixed in. Basically, the main theme of the video was that you should really try to do what you love, right? Because that is ultimately the best thing for us, right? We should, as people, do the thing that we love because, yeah, you might have a great job that pays a lot of money, but if you only get 3 weeks, 4 weeks vacation a year, and that's when you enjoy yourself, and maybe the weekends and the rest of the week you're kind of slugging it out and you're not happy, is that really a good life? I mean, that's kind of what it was more of like a philosophy video. And I thought, hey, that's kind of a good point, and also kind of why I do what I do right now. I kind of made the decision that I'd be happier doing the thing I love, even if I didn't make as much money. In fact, I remember being told by photographers when I first quit my job to become a photographer, they were like, oh, what? You were making how much money? Well, no, go back, do that. Don't be a photographer. And, they were sincere. There were people that actually, they weren't like, because I know you're probably thinking, oh, they didn't want the competition. But no, they were sincere people that were friendly. And I think in a way, right, that's kind of one of these things, it's tough to work for yourself, and it's tough to be a photographer. And having a job is, especially a good job, is like a gift in a sense. So quitting that job to do photography is a big decision. Now, that being said, I'll talk in a minute I'll talk about kind of how I actually did that, if you guys are interested. What I think is important, and the reason why I'm saying quit your job but not yet, is I don't think you should watch a philosophical motivational video where it says, you hate your job so you should quit it, and I mean, I'm not saying that's what this kid was trying to say, but and then be like, shit, I do hate my job, I quit. Because that would just be silly, right? I think that you're probably in a good position, right, as a photographer, if you're watching this, because I'm guessing that if you're watching this video about quitting your job to become a photographer, you have a camera, you have Photoshop or something, you've got lights, maybe you've got equipment, you basically are already taking pictures. You have maybe you don't have the best gear or the gear you'd want to use for every single job, but you already have the basis of being a photographer, the money for that spent, right? You already have some money invested in it as a hobby that you could turn into a business. And I think the not yet part is this. You want to be in the position when you quit your job to support yourself with the photography. And they say that you should have about 6 months, basic kind of costs covered. So not like, obviously during that first 6 months, yeah, you're gonna suck it up and not go to the movies or whatever, but your food, your rent, that kind of stuff. So depending on where you are in life, that might range from a lot of money, right? If you've got a family and a house and a new car and whatever, to not much at all if you're young, which I was when I started. So, that really matters. And I think you got to really think about that when you make this plan. So what I would say is, if you think that you want to quit your job, number one, because you don't like it. Number two, you think you want to be a photographer. Those two things are being mashed together here, right? They don't necessarily have to be the same thing, right? You could quit the job you have and go to another job that you might like, because having a regular, steady job that you work at, that pays you regular, is nice, right? I mean, if you can do that, maybe I'll do another video just talking about the thought process of being a freelancer, because it's definitely a different way of living. Anyways, though, sidetracked. But if you're going to quit your job, don't just do it. I always say that don't do things very rashly, right? So you make the decision, right? You say, I'm going to do photography. You can do it in steps, right? You can basically, you already have the camera and stuff. You can start doing the things that are less expensive and easier on the wallet or time-wise to build your business before you actually quit your job. Now, yeah, that's a lot of work, right? Because you're basically going to be running or starting to run a small business and work a full-time job. But you know what? That's a safety net. It makes it safe for you. You can basically be like, hey, I am starting to sell portraits. Let's say that, I don't know, you charge $50. I'm just throwing numbers, so it doesn't really matter. I don't charge $50 for a portrait. I mean, I don't know, maybe you do where you are. You want to charge $50 for a portrait, you're just starting, people are going to use them for their LinkedIn or whatever. You've got an Instagram up already. You start doing these portraits of your friends, you know, and people that you know, kind of low-key, just charging $50, so you're covering kind of like a little bit of time and expenses. You're putting the money away to either build towards that 6 months, or you're putting it away to buy some equipment, because maybe you know you can do a better job shooting you know, these portraits if you had, let's say, a light. Maybe you don't have a light. Maybe you're just shooting them all outside, and it's the summer, and that's fine for now, right? But you know that when the winter comes, you're going to want to go inside, or business people might want them in a conference room, so you're going to want to buy some lights. So you're using that money for that, right? You're also cutting back on other things, right? Look at the things that that you spend money on and make choices, right? Because if you have, let's say, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, I don't know, other ones you pay for. There's a bunch of different things you can pay for, HBO, whatever. You can't watch them all at once, right? So maybe make a choice. Maybe say, you know what, I'm just going to pick the one that I like the best, and I'm going to cut back these other ones. I bet you that you could save, you know, a bit of money there. I don't know how many channels you have. Now, things like coffee, right? I drink a lot of coffee. You see me drink coffee, right? But I often will make my own coffee because it's less expensive and I'm cheap. But also I got into the habit of doing that because as a freelancer, like, it probably costs me 50 cents to make this cup of coffee. If I go to the corner store and buy it, it's going to be $1.50, right? For the same thing. So, also I don't have to go to the corner store to buy it. I can just walk to my kitchen, which is nice. So, anyways, that doesn't mean that I don't buy coffee when I'm out with my friends or do whatever, but I consider everything I spent. Get into the habit of doing that, because that's a freelancer's way of thinking, right? You don't just randomly spend. You don't put something on a credit card just because you want it. You got to figure out, well, how am I going to pay for that? Because I don't have the regular check coming in. It's actually really interesting. You can live better on a regular salary of less money than you make as a freelancer, which is kind of weird, because when I say that, I mean, as a freelancer, you're always going to be paranoid and not spend, because you're just like socking away for when you're not busy. Whereas in a regular job, you kind of know that next check's coming. I mean, granted, you could get, you know, laid off or whatever, but most people don't think like that, because that's more of an employee way of thinking. You know, the regular check. Whew, got sidetracked there. Sorry, the coffee. Any mention of coffee sidetracks me. But anyways, the idea here is that what we're going to do is we're going to start to do two things. We're going to, I guess, three things. Save money. Start to build up a little bit of the equipment that we think we need if we don't already have it. I mean, maybe you already have enough, so you don't need to buy anything else. And the third thing we're going to do is, and this is the most important thing, and it's more subtle, is we're going to start changing our mindset into that of a freelancer, right? So a freelancer doesn't just randomly spend money. A freelancer doesn't, you know, just go ahead and buy stuff because they want it in the impulse. A freelancer thinks about how much money they have, what other projects are coming in that'll pay them, and such, right? They're thinking all the time about where the money is going to come from, because they don't know, right? So start those things, right? Spend 6 months, spend a year, right? So I'll say, I'll give you my kind of quick story of how I did it. And I read a couple of books, so I kind of, you know, had some ideas, but I still made a lot of mistakes, and we'll see how much that I talk about. But anyways, so when I first finished college, I went to school for photography. People ask me that all the time, so I went to school for photography. And I got a really good job. I actually had been working in the warehouse, excuse me, at Reebok, the shoe company, right? We were the distribution center. And I kind of worked my way up through the chain there. And when I graduated, I actually got into a job in the corporate offices. It was kind of fortuitous. It was a weird kind of like luck and being in the right place at the right time and having done a good job. A guy who I had worked for in the warehouse had got promoted up there, and he worked in a department for a little bit, so he knew those people in that department was hiring a photographer. And this was the worst photography job ever. It was basically documenting the designs so that they could have trademark on them. So every time a new design was made, they'd make a prototype shoot, I'd photograph it. It was really crappy. Although I did kind of change the way they did it and made it a little better. But anyways, I didn't make the photography better, I made the system better. I was in charge of that. So I did that for, and it paid pretty well. I did that for 6 months or so, and just did like a really good job. And I was learning from everybody around me. There was a lot of people who were like engineers and stuff, and an opening came up for a job that was more of an engineering. It was a development job, developing the actual shoes. And I didn't really have the background in it, but I had done a really good job, and my manager really loved me and whatever. And I went and interviewed, and they gave me a shot, and I tried it, and I got the job. And it paid really well for a 20-something-year-old kid. And I like bought a new car, and I was like spending money, going out to eat every night and whatever. And about a year went by, and I realized I hadn't taken a single picture. We didn't have cameras on our phones back then, right? So you only took pictures if you had a camera, and I hadn't pulled my camera out. And I realized it because a friend of mine who was working there as well, her sister wanted to do some modeling pictures, and I was like, oh, well, I'm a photographer. So I went out and took pictures, and I was so rusty, right? And then they came out fine, whatever, but man, I was like, wow, I haven't taken a picture in a year, and I'm rusty, and, I miss it. So I sat down that night, and I said, I need to do this, and I pulled up my calendar. I remember very much doing this. It was in November. I pulled up my calendar, and I flipped 1 year into the future, and I circled a date, and I said, on that day, I'm quitting my job. And that was it. I made that choice, right? I did the quit the job thing. So now I realized, right, that I needed to do something. So I started reading some books. I think I mentioned before, 20-something creative guide to employment. I'll see if I can find it. I don't know if I ever found a link for it, but I'll see if I can find it this time. I read that, which I thought was really great. I read a bunch of books on photography. I'd been doing that anyways because I was interested in reading photography books. I just wasn't shooting. And that's where I spent my money, but I cut back on, I paid off my car. I made like double and triple payments because I had the money coming and I was just wasting it, right? I made big payments on my car, get it paid off. I paid off any of the money I owed from college, which wasn't fortunately that much because I worked full time when I was in college. I couldn't get student loans, so I had to just pay for it with cash, which I basically did. So luckily, I was able to do that. So I basically got myself to more or less debt free and a bit of money saved up. And a year later, I got in my car and I moved to Miami. I mean, with no connections, no nothing. I flew down, I think, a month before to look at places in Fort Lauderdale originally, but then I ended up moving to Miami Beach. But that's a whole other story. And it was pretty awesome, and scary. And I went with no backup plan. My plan was, I'm young. If I completely go destitute and I'm broke, I will just literally go back home. It'll suck, it'll be embarrassing. I'll lose my car, I'll lose my shit, but in the end, if I have myself, I can go back and get a job somewhere and start over because I'm still young enough that I don't really have, in the end, yeah, my car was like my life, but you don't have that much to lose when all you have is basically a car and a computer and some cameras and stuff. So, yeah, that's what I did, and it worked. And here I am. It doesn't work for everybody, of course. And I did have a bit of money saved, and I pulled some money out of things like a 401k, which you shouldn't do. If you're 20-something years old and you have a decent 401k somehow, which I did, don't pull that out because you're going to want it when you're my age now. But anyways, I did it. I pulled it out. I needed the money. And yeah, I was able to do it. And I did, and that's how I did it. I really knew I wanted to be a photographer. Deep down inside, I always wanted to be a photographer. It was something I had to do, right? So I knew that quitting my job was the right thing to do. It may or may not be for you. You really have to decide that. But what I would definitely advise is be smart about it. And don't go, yeah, someday I'll quit my job because I don't like it. Make a plan, right? Make a very simple plan. Put a little bit of money to the side. Everybody constantly says they don't have money. You have money. Find it. For 1 week, here's your assignment. For 1 week, either keep receipts or better, get a notebook, Literally write down every single thing you spend money on. And then at the end of the week, go through and make check marks next to the stuff that you really probably didn't need. And I bet you spent anywhere from 25 to 100 or maybe more dollars on just stuff that you really didn't need. And cut that stuff. Cut that, boom, put that stuff in the bank, start saving up, figure out what your expenses are, what you need to be ahead for 6 months. If you do have a lot of expenses, like you have a house, you're older, it's going to be more money, right? Clearly. Also, start doing a little bit of freelance stuff on the side. This, number one, get your business going before you even quit. Number two, let you know if you actually like doing it professionally. Because you might love taking pictures, but you might hate the business part of it. Like me, you might realize, oh God, it's awesome shooting my friends, but I don't want to shoot all these people, Get those things going and maybe pick up a little bit more gear. So when you are ready to quit your job, you're also ready to start your business. You're not just sitting there like, oh, okay, now I'm out here. And this is also true, and I hear this a lot because I get a lot of DMs, and I talk to a lot of people that are younger who are in college, and they say to me, "You think I should quit school?" And I would say the same thing. I mean, I heavily lean towards the idea that you should finish school if you can, because it's a good thing to have. I don't think I've ever been questioned that I have a degree, but I might have been. Like if that year in Florida hadn't paid off and I hadn't started working, I would have went back and looked for jobs. And having a degree, well, I mean, I guess it helped me get the first job. That was a really good job. So, my brother said to me once in a conversation, he said, Daniel, well, he probably didn't say it like that because he doesn't call me that. He said, you don't, employers don't want to see a college degree because of what you learned in college. What they want to see is that you have the capacity to learn and follow through. And that's what a degree does for you. So if you're in school, I recommend that unless you're just killing you and you can't afford it, that you do the same thing. You stick with it, but you start your photography as a thing as well. Do it at the same time. Incorporate it, photograph the people around the school. Do stuff for the school, put posts up, whatever you got to do to get work. Make some extra cash doing it. Make that your part-time job. That's what I would do. Kind of wish I had done that in my part-time, well, it was a full-time job actually. I was loading trucks when I was in college, but it would have been great to do photography. And now I think is one of the best times to ever be in business for yourself, and that's also going to be another video. So hopefully this helps you guys. Let me know, for those of you who are shooting and getting paid for it, how you started. Are you full-time? Do you or if you maybe you did it and now you don't do it anymore. And those of you who do it part-time, what's your goal? Do you want to do it full-time? Does anybody out there, did they just up and be like, you know what, I'm leaving my job and I'm just going to do this? And if so, how'd that work for you? I'm really curious. So I'm going to do a few more of these business type videos for you guys. Like I said, I'm going to keep this kind of thing going on until you ask for something else. I will toss in some more live streams and some more live demos, because I know you guys asked for that. So I've got some plans. I got Mercy coming, so we're going to probably shoot some fun videos doing some technique stuff that you guys have asked about as well. So keep the DMs coming, keep the comments coming. Let me know what you guys want to see. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell so you know when they're active, and I'll see you next time.